In South Africa, March is designated as Human Rights Month with a particular focus on Human Rights Day on the 21st of March, of course, commemorating the Sharpeville Massacre and the struggle for liberation and democracy. So Lidia Rauch, founder of Bloom Enterprise, will be facilitating an anti-racism conversation within challenging situations leading up to Human Rights Day. And so the screening at the Bioscope marks the first official viewing of her talk, which will be followed by a live Q&A and an invite for you to ask hard questions during a time where the global culture is also facing many trials. So she joins us in studio to chat a little bit further about this. Lydia, good morning. Thank you. Thank you for being part of us.
Thank you so much for being here.
These conversations are important. And I mean, you were chatting offline about how there've been national calls, funding elections for this national dialogue that needs to happen. But it also needs to be happening in our silos, in our spaces, and look at ways to influence. So if the agenda is to be inclusive and just face reality and get to that truth, why do you think it was important, especially at this juncture?
Yeah, I think what's happening in the world doesn't give us an option anymore, right? Yeah. I really think as a country, we're 30 years down the line into democracy, but we really haven't done much in terms of our reconciliation project in this nation. Like, we really haven't given an opportunity for the vast majority of South Africans to really just feel and, quite frankly, heal, right? Yeah. And I really think the time is now to look within, to do the personal work. I think national dialogue is incredibly important and should happen, but I think it would be a mistake to leave it there. I think there also needs to be a call to action for the average, ordinary South African out there to also look within, to do that personal work, to be like, what are the biases perhaps that I might still be holding and have always held within me that I need to confront? And also, what kind of agency, how can I use my agency to really develop and strengthen the reconciliation project? Because I really think we still have a reconciliation gap, because if you think about the TRC, that was like almost 30 years ago for a handful of people, but no one else really had the opportunity to see each other human to human. And that's the thing that the Constitution will never be able to do for us, unfortunately. Although it's this wonderfully progressive document and it's there to protect us, it doesn't really help us to see each other human to human in the way that I think we absolutely still need to as South Africans, but of course also globally, which we can see in the world right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of the nation-building social cohesion project. And I remember seeing an example of someone aptly describing that we had a wound, and then we had elections in '94 and we bandaged the wound and we never unwrapped it. So it's now rotting. We need to salvage. Do we cut it off? Do we clean it out? It's painful. It means, having to go through that process as well. And so if we can also look at systemic inequalities, looking at privilege as well. I mean, those are real conversations that also need to be had and faced head on. How are you going to tackle that?
I mean, I think, so how I tackle it through my work is really just holding space where we can look at that. Because the thing is, with systemic inequality and, quite frankly, systemic racism, it's not necessarily, I think the important difference that I always want people to really realize, it's not inherent about you. Every human being on planet Earth is born pure and is born good. And I fundamentally believe that, right? But we become part of the system as soon as we come into the world, right? And then it's almost like, I love using the metaphor of, it's like throwing a tea bag in boiling water. It will infuse. You can't stop it. We took the tea bag out. So apartheid's over, colonialism is over, but we still exist in that tea, right? So the work that I do is, how can I acknowledge, and that how the invitation that we try to extend to South Africans is, how can I acknowledge the system within me? Because it's within all of us, right? And if we don't acknowledge it, we just keep it in place perpetually. And we're almost guilty in a way as well, without knowing, because we exist in the system, we're upholding it, we're accepting certain things as complete norm. If we think about systemic racism, systemic inequality, it comes down to unquestioned social norms, the way that the world works and has always worked. And that's the thing that we participate in. What is the automatic assumption I'm making about a particular person based on how they look? Those little things, that's the most important, and that's the invitation, right? It's not just the grandstanding or the public debate. That's important. But again, it's about looking within. That's the invitation. And that's what my talk is also about.
It's that nature-nurture debate that comes through. But then also, again, to your point about looking within, that also needs tools. That also needs help. You need help and support as well. But I wonder if you're going to incorporate that live Q&A element. I mean, you can't control where it's going to go.
Yes, of course.
And I wonder how that's then also going to be incorporated through the talk,
Yes, I think, the thing with, you can't control where that goes, but it's also, it's about showing and seeing each other's humanity and being okay with that. You know what I mean? I always say, and the talk's also on anti-racism, and it's about an invitation back to your own humanity. Like I said before, we're all born pure and we're all born good. It's just reconnecting with your real self. You know what I mean? So standing up against systemic inequality is reconnecting with your true self. That's not becoming something else, actually having to do the hard work. But if we think about things like opening up the conversation, I think often we are so scared because, what if it goes wrong? What does that even mean? It's about it needs to be human, and whatever that means, even if it's messy, it needs to, then we need to hold space for it. And I think that's the thing as South Africans that we struggle with. We've become so sophisticated with representing change, but when we actually think about the real change, it requires some messiness. It requires not knowing.
If fair, I'll take that point, but I also think the responsibility of once you open up a wound to manage it and close it is also important, right? So it's one thing to have these raw emotions being exposed. So then once the convo is done, once the Q&A is done as well, I mean, where to from here? What does that bigger picture look like for you then? Yeah.
For me, I mean, this is what I do for a living. So we create these spaces, we hold spaces. Of course, I work with experts in the field as well to do this work responsibly. You wouldn't just, open these wounds and have a workshop with people in a room and not really be able to hold space sufficiently to also cater for emotional needs and emotional triggers that come up, etc. Like what we're talking about here is starting the conversation. But of course, starting the conversation and having a Q&A afterwards isn't enough. It's enough to hopefully get the ball rolling, to be the first domino that falls, hopefully. And after that, to do the deep and real work. So that's where, my day-to-day comes in terms of the work that I do. And that's where I think it's really important to do it in a responsible way and to make sure that you don't just have a talk or a public engagement, but actually hold space for human-to-human interaction and also deep, real transformation, which looks like I'm willing to acknowledge my own bias. I'm willing to even acknowledge my own perhaps racism, sexism, homophobia, because of course it's all intersectional, right?
Absolutely.
And that's a great responsibility, as you say, to do it in the right way. And that's what, in the space that I work in, we try to do responsibly as far as possible as humans.
So what does justice look like for you at large, if we can envision the next 31 years of our democracy? And if people want to attend, perhaps you can also share those details for us.
Yes, okay, perfect. So it's at the Bioscope on Thursday, this coming Thursday on the 20th at 2 p.m. in the afternoon at 44 Stanley. So it will be like a screening, like a movie, and afterwards we'll have a chat. Real justice, sure, that's a really big question, but for me, I love making it very personal and looking at the human being as opposed to the bigger picture. I think government has responsibility. I think when we as human beings as South Africans hold government accountable, I think that's great. I think that's our responsibility and I think we should do that. But I really think we should stop looking to government to do this for us. I think real transformation and real healing, real reconciliation, like I said, and quite frankly, genuine justice will only happen with genuine commitment from human beings and from ordinary South Africans. If you look at change globally, throughout history, that has never been regulated by government. That's always been, if you look at the fall of apartheid in this country, that was ordinary South Africans standing up for what's right. Right?
We the people.
Exactly. So for me, that's what it's about. But it comes down to really looking within. That's what I do in my work with racism, anti-racism work. We do something called white work as well, which is really hard and quite frankly sucks, but I create a space, for example, for white people where you can look honestly at our own inherent racist beliefs as an example and address them. So what that really looks like is to do that ourselves and to actually look within in terms of the personal work that we need to do.
The conversation continues. Thank you for joining us this morning. Wishing you all the best as you embark on your endeavors. But this morning, Lidia Rauch, founder of Bloom Enterprise, in conversation just ahead of Human Rights Day. Of course, that is happening on the 20th of March at the Bioscope, just at 44 Stanley.